Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the weekly webinar on different topics being done from Yashoda Hospital. I am Dr. G. Ramesh, consultant cardiologist at Yashoda Hospital, Secunderabad. So this is part of the webinar on cardiology. Along with me is my colleague Dr. Aditya. Today we'll be discussing about coronary artery disease, particularly in reference to complex angioplasty in relation to calcified vessels. So we all know coronary artery disease is the most common cause of death world over, particularly in India. So there are different causes for coronary artery disease. Once the patient has got coronary artery disease, we have got three options once we do an angiogram. Either we can put the patient on medical management if the blocks are not critical. We can do an angioplasty or a bypass surgery based on the types of blocks, number of blocks, patient's age group, and the different other comorbidities. So once an angiogram is done, we've got three options: medical management if the blocks are less than 70%, if the blocks are very critical, or if the blocks are multiple blocks, and if the blocks are very calcified, then possibly more in towards bypass surgery. If the blocks are less, then possibly go towards stenting. Having said that, with the recent advances in cardiology, we are tackling more and more complex lesions, more and more calcified lesions with angioplasty rather than going for bypass. In specific reference to calcified vessels, the results are suboptimal both with stenting and bypass also. Having said that, last couple of years, there have been multiple advances in treatment of calcified vessels by angioplasty in the form of newer balloons, IVL, rotablation, which has been there for many years. So we will be discussing the different options which have come up for treating calcified vessels to give a good result. Not just a good result, but a safe result for these patients. So the Dr. Aditya would be discussing the different options which are available with us for treating these calcified vessels. After his presentation, I would be showing a case or a couple of cases, basically where we have used one or different modalities which have been discussed for getting a good result. So over to you, Aditya. We will be discussing about the different modalities in treatment of calcified vessels. Aditya.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ramesh, for giving a brief overview of the concept of revascularization. And indeed, as we have seen over these past 2 decades, the way angioplasty has evolved and the safety and the confidence with which we are doing these angioplasties has brought very good results to patients, and also improved our confidence level in actually taking up these cases, which were originally sent for bypass surgery. Now, this is the standard element of angioplasty. We all are aware. It's a fairly simple depiction. A guide wire is passed, and then we see a plaque that is quite soft, and then we implant our stent, and the plaque is compressed to the wall of the artery. We gain a good lumen because of this procedure. Ultimately, the goal of revascularization is to restore the predictable blood flow, and this is quite easily achieved with this strategy. So this is the traditional angioplasty that we are all by now aware of. But then we do have these roadblocks that we encounter when we do these angioplasties. In fact, we can for ourselves see on the left hand side of this image, we see two nice discrete lesions. This is a very discrete lesion. And also there's another discrete lesion here. These are the kind of angioplasties like I described earlier. They are easy to perform. They do not have much complexity, and we hope to achieve a very good result. Now, on the right hand side, if you see the picture, we see a highly ragged appearance of a lesion, which involves a lot of calcium and aneurysms and element of tortuosity. These are the kind of lesions, these are the kind of plaques which are unlikely to yield a good and a predictable result. So, the enemies of angioplasty, according to me, are heavy calcification, diffuse small vessel disease. I mean, there is no proper landing zone. The disease is extending from proximal to the distal segment. A lot of bends in the artery, which you call tortuosity, a bifurcation lesion, long segment disease. So, these are all can be considered as enemies or roadblocks to a good angioplasty. So, in this, I want to say today we'll be focusing on this calcification for two reasons. In our practice these years, we see a lot of patients coming to us in advanced stage with repeat procedures, patient coming to us with heavy calcium burden. And so we have begun to enter the era of repeat procedures where we are seeing this problem quite often these days. So that is what calcification is our focus of debate today. So the challenges of treating calcified coronary lesions is when we have increased coronary calcification, the procedure that I have shown earlier, nicely the plaque is shifted and to the vessel wall, and we are able to get a good lumen, does not happen anymore. Now, because the calcium does not allow for effective expansion of the stent, we see that the lumen that is derived is compromised. As well as these are two scenarios. On one side, there's heavy calcium lump. Here also the stent does not expand. The other situation also we can see the stent does not expand. So what it really leads to is we get a suboptimal result. There's a decreased stent expansion. There are more complications as we try to expand that. When we use higher pressure, the vessel may rupture. And ultimately, all this leads to poorer outcomes. So the extent of coronary artery calcium correlates with the degree of atherosclerosis. The extent also correlates with the plaque burden. And then these microcalcifications in the fibrous cap may actually induce plaque ruptures, and they are known to be harbingers of acute myocardial infarction. And then this healing and hemorrhage cycle may actually considerably contribute to worsening future outcomes and also angina and sudden cardiac death. So this is also well established in trials. We see that in heavily calcified vessels, the major adverse cardiovascular events, that is the MACE, is quite high, significantly high as compared to where the calcium burden is much lesser. So cardiac death is more, MI is more, target lesion revascularization is more, MACE is more. So that is the impact of calcium. Now, as we can see with the aging population, we see that there's increased prevalence of calcium in our patients. Like above 70 years, we can see almost in all vascular beds, we see extensive calcium. In the younger patient below 50 years, we don't see much calcium. So that is the impact of aging on calcium. So the patterns of calcium are, one is intimal calcification and one is a medial calcification. As interventional cardiologists, we are not so much bothered about the medial calcification because it's a calcification of the vessel wall, and that is most often an outcome of renal dysfunction or hypercalcemia states, hyperphosphatemia. This is the kind of calcium that does not cause much impediment to us. But what causes problem is the intimal calcification, which is also seen in advanced stage diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, because of smoking and in the males. So this is a kind of differentiation we make in terms of calcification, whether it's intimal or medial. So intimal is more likely to cause us trouble during angioplasty. Medial is less likely to cause us trouble. So what are the breakthroughs we have looked at is, first of all, with our imaging modalities like OCT, IVUS and angiography, we are able to quantitate and describe the calcium more appropriately and more extensively. And with that, we plan our plaque modification and optimization with various tools that are available to us. That is a cutting balloon, scoring balloon, rotational atherectomy, rotablation, orbital atherectomy, and intravascular lithotripsy and all. So these are all the strategies that are available to us in the last 4 or 5 years, which help us to modify these calcified plaques better and get a good result. So this is a brief overview of the imaging modalities that we have. Angiography, in fact, the moment we do angiography, we see these lumps of calcium on fluoroscopy and we almost realize that this is a heavily calcified plaque, not something easy to do. So we immediately alert ourselves to the possibility of a complex angioplasty procedure. So angiography gives us an idea, but it does not give us a very clear idea about the localization and the quantification. So here IVUS helps us, OCT helps us, it helps us in detecting, it helps us in localizing, and it helps us in quantifying the calcium. So this helps us to plan our strategies for these patients better. So we use a range of these options at our center also. Sometimes we combine these also. Sometimes we may use IVUS and OCT together to get a very good idea about the calcium burden we are facing. So one of the first and simple ways to deal with calcium is the non-compliant balloons. So here the non-compliant balloon, basically what it does is these are balloons that are adapted or designed to not to inflict enough a lot of barotrauma on the healthy vessel when we are trying to expand the calcified vessel. When we use too much pressure, in a normal balloon there's what is called as dog boning, and this dog boning leads to a trauma to the healthy vessel. So the non-compliant balloons are designed in such a way that the force is transmitted to the calcified vessel and not damage the healthy vessel. So this is one step we use. Second is the cutting balloons. Again, this is another innovative technology where there are these flextome, or these are the sharp blades are there on the balloon, and these are impregnated on the balloon, and then we go on to deliver this to the calcified vessel region. So small cuts, low pressure cuts are inflicted on the vessel wall and atraumatically, leading to better lumen expansion. And this is one technique we use sometimes to deal with these calcified lesions. Angiosculpt is also another balloon where a nitinol element is used to score the plaque. These are wound around the balloon during, and these help to actually debride and create some micro incisions on the vessel, and also remove the calcium to the extent possible. So we end up gaining 33 to 50% greater luminal gain, and this helps us in our stent implantation. So these are the things with the balloon strategies. Now coming to the interesting concept of rotational atherectomy, I think we have taken up this thing from the polishing industry. So the rotor devices are, they use a rotating diamond coated elliptical burr that pulverizes the portion of the fibrous calcified plaques and leaves a smooth non-endothelialized surface with intact media. So we use this burr, and it typically rotates at 2 lakh rotations per minute, abrading the hard tissue. And then this helps us atraumatically to achieve a good lumen size. So this works on the principle of differential atherectomy, and Dr. Ramesh will be showing an interesting case that he has done with the use of this device in the following presentation. So ultimately, the rotaburr is a small, tiny burr from 1.25 millimeters to 1.75 millimeters up to 2 millimeters. So it has these diamond burrs coated on that, and it rotates at a tremendous speed, slowly debriding off these calcified nodules. So the interesting thing is it spares the soft tissue, but goes on to ablate the hardened fibrotic calcium. So if we just use a balloon, we see that the vessel is damaged here, like in the left side. If you just do a rota, we see that the vessel is intact, whereas we have gained the adequate lumen diameter. So this is how the device looks like. This is where the console unit is there. It's connected to a nitrogen or air, pressurized air. And then these are the burrs that are available to us. And while using this as the on-off switch start, we introduce this rotaburr into the coronary artery, gently pecking the calcified vessel, and we ablate it in varying intervals. The other system is orbital atherectomy. This is also used sometimes. So here we have an ablative element which is located laterally on the coil, which consists of 3 helically wound wires, and then it rotates at 60,000 to 1,20,000 rounds per minute. And again, with the same ablative principle, we are able to do a plaque modification. This is how an orbital atherectomy catheter looks like. Again, a good technique. So some of the important differences are the learning curve is lesser, and the learning curve is shorter, and it does not require as much training as the rotational atherectomy requires. So this is another good option that is available to us to deal with the calcified lesions. The laser is another interesting concept. Ultraviolet energy photoablates arterial blockages, and then it helps us to pulverize to remove this plaque material with various methods. The photochemical is used by dissolving the molecular bonds. The same laser energy has three properties: photothermal creates heat energy, and photomechanical creates kinetic energy. With these three elements of action, we are able to ablate these calcified plaques. So they are indicated in a variety of conditions where balloons have failed or osteal lesions, long lesions, moderate calcium, saphenous vein grafts. So in various settings are this. So this is the excimer laser that is available. And again, this is useful in certain settings of calcified disease. Intravascular lithotripsy, a very interesting concept. Our urology colleagues will understand this better. The shockwave lithotripsy, like how we pulverize the renal stones. Here we use this concept to pulverize the calcium in the coronary artery. So here the balloon catheter has got emitters which convert electrical energy into transient circumferential pressure or sonic pressure waves. They help to fracture the vascular plaque, thereby altering vessel compliance. So balloon catheter is advanced to the target lesion in a typical fashion over 036 coronary guide wire, and then the balloon is attached to external pulse generator. So the balloon is inflated at low atmospheres, and then further balloon dilatations, these energies are delivered, and further balloon dilatation is done. So this is how the IVL looks like. This is the principle of intravascular lithotripsy. So this balloon that is there in the calcified vessel emits these shock waves. Now on the OCT picture, we can see the calcified vessel, and after delivering the shock wave, it has broken the calcium. It has allowed us to implant a well proper size stent. So that is how lithotripsy is being used. This is again we have started using in the last 1 year or so with very good results in modifying plaques. So again, it's indicated in coronary calcification and undilatable lesions where stent underexpansion is there, and evidence of heavy calcification that we see on our imaging beforehand. So typically we prepare ourselves beforehand itself to choose the best strategy for our patients. So the advantages are it allows more controlled means of calcium modification. There's less risk of reflow, and then allows maintenance of simultaneous guide wire placement, bifurcation lesion, and then less technically demanding. It's as simple as putting a balloon, so it does not require any additional hardware or any additional strategies. So this is interventional adjuncts to balloon angioplasty. So balloon angioplasty has evolved from a simple balloon angioplasty to quantifying or angiographic calcification before. Mild calcium we can manage without atherectomy. Moderate calcium we quantify it with IVUS and OCT. If we still find it to be mild, the patient goes to a non-atherectomy strategy. If it is severe, we choose among one of these strategies like rotational atherectomy, orbital atherectomy, or we use IVL also. So this is a brief overview of the subject of plaque modification. Dr. Ramesh will show some of the interesting cases that we have been doing in this hospital in the last few years, and how we are using to solve critical complex coronary artery disease, and the confidence level we have achieved with the tools that are available to us. Thank you.
It's a very succinct and very nice presentation, Aditya. So, as Aditya has told, there are a few options for us with calcified vessels. The first being rotablation, which is technically more demanding, but very rewarding as such. So this has been there for the last few years, and we do it very frequently. In fact, we are one center which probably does one of the highest number of rotablations in India. In addition to that, the next option would be an IVL, which has come up. In addition to the routine balloons, we have got routine non-compliant balloons as such, NC balloons, which we have been using for many years. Rotablation is one thing which definitely helps us in these very calcified vessels. The other balloons would be an OPN balloon, which sometimes the other this thing would be a OPN balloon, which helps in a very calcified vessel, particularly where we can go up to 30-40 atmospheres with the inflation device. Normally balloons we generally go up to 16 to 18 to 20 atmospheres. With the OPN balloon, we can go to very high pressures up to 40 atmospheres. So that will help us in breaking this calcium sometimes. The other, as Aditya has mentioned, is the laser, which is again has got a very specific use for these calcified vessels. Orbital atherectomy is the only thing which is not available yet in India, but otherwise all the other modalities we have been using very frequently. In addition to the IVL, which has actually been again a game changer for last 1 year or so, as Aditya has mentioned, we have been using it with gratifying results. So, so the other point which I want to mention is the need for imaging in these patients. Most of these patients with calcifications, the decision is not just by angiography. We need a good imaging modality in the form of an IVUS or OCT. So the imaging will tell us where the calcium is, what is the degree of calcium in these vessels, and that will guide us to choose the modality of which is the best for the patient. Suppose we do an OCT or an HD IVUS or an IVUS, we see the calcium is around 180 degrees in the circumference. So 180 degree circumference, the calcium can be tackled with probably a NC balloon. Suppose the calcium is around 270 degrees or 270 to 360 degrees, then probably there will be a need for rotablation. If the calcium is intimal, definitely a rotablation is a must for these patients. If the calcium is adventitial, then in addition to rotablation, probably an IVL would be more beneficial in this patients. Sometimes we use both, where rotablation with IVL is called as rotatripsy. So all sorts of combinations are used based on the need, and this is guided by the imaging modality. I'm going to show one case particularly. This case is basically a 68-year-old lady where I've used imaging modality in the form of HD IVUS and multiple balloons, and where I had to use rotablation also for getting a fairly good result. This is a 68-year-old lady, diabetic hypertensive COPD, with a history of carcinoma of ovary with multiple metastases. So not a extremely fit lady in that way. Recently she had underwent surgery for CA ovary also, presently on chemotherapy for the same. This lady presented with recurrent angina for the last 1 week or so. So initially we tried to give some medicines and tried to manage, but the patient was having a recurrent angina at rest. After a few days, she presented with a non-ST elevation myocardial infarction, very dynamic ECG changes with elevation of troponin. The 2D echo was showing a ejection fraction of 50% with hypokinesia of the lateral wall. So this is a patient with multiple comorbidities in the form of diabetes, hypertension, with a malignancy, post-surgery, being treated with chemotherapy. Not extremely fit lady in that way, but having ongoing rest angina. So we had to take her for, with occupied medical management, she was having angina. So we had to take her for coronary angiogram. So that was showing a very critical left main. If you see the left picture, that shows initially left main, which is branching into LAD and LCX, which very critical block in the distal left main, ostial LAD and ostial LCX. So all the blocks are around 90%, very critical. If you can notice, there's a lot of calcium bundle there. There's a huge calcium chunk at the bifurcation. So this left side is the epicaudal view. The right side one is the epicranial view. Both show a very critical trifurcation or a bifurcation block of the left main. Particularly, there's a chunk of calcium at the LCX ostium. So these sort of lesions generally are not amenable to simple angioplasty. So the other option, these patients, these are the multiple views which I'm showing. This is levocaudal view and epicranial view. So whenever we have a patient like this, the options would be twofold. One is a bypass surgery, other is multivessel PCI with rotablation. Here the life expectancy for this patient was relatively poor. The syntax score which we calculate to assess the risk of angioplasty versus medical surgical management is around 26, little on higher risk. The mortality with PCA 4-year mortality is 10.2%, bypass mortality is 12.4%. Euro score is high. Basically, it is suggesting to us the bypass risk would be high for this patient. Then we decided to go for a PCI with rotablation. So the initial views you have seen anyway. What we would do is initially we pass a wires in both LAD and LCX. After that, we need a special wire for rotablation, which is a little flimsy wire. We need to put a wire in the distal LAD or LCX, then exchange with the microcatheter, take a rotabur. So this is a rotablation burrs or a diamond coated burrs, as Aditya shown. These are got different sizes, 1.25, 1.5 and 1.75, up till 2 or 2.25. Also, the most common used burr would be a 1.5 burr. So this basically cuts the calcium without damaging the other vessels. So here first, because both the vessels were calcified, we passed a wire in the LED and we did a rotablation with a 1.5 bar with 1,60,000 RPM. Generally common RPM used is between 150 to 170. Here we have used a RPM of 1,60,000. So this is the rotablation of the LED. The other tougher part was the rotablation of the LCX. There was, if you notice, there's a 90-degree angle of the LCX with a chunk of calcium at the LCX ostium. So we need a little more finesse in doing this. So we did a rotablation of the LCX ostium with the same 1.5 bar after doing rotablation of the LED. So this is the rotablation of the LCX ostium, if you can see this. So this is the burr passing down into the LCX. So this will basically cut the calcium there. So once we did a rotablation of the LCX ostium, so there are again different modalities. Initially we passed a 2 balloon, 2 into 10 balloon. Again we followed up with a 2.5 into 10 non-compliant balloon. This is the 3 into 10 flextome cutting balloon. This is a cutting balloon which is used from Boston, which is a very good balloon. So we have used a cutting balloon into the, once we did a rotablation, we need to open the vessel properly. So we used a cutting balloon both into the LED and into the LCX, same cutting balloon, 3 into 10 cutting balloon flextome to dilate both these vessels. So again, this is again the same cutting balloon being used to open the LED and the LCX. After the cutting balloon were used, we did a HDIOS imaging initially also, which I have not put in these images, but HDIOS would again give us the vessel diameter, the extent of calcium and all. After that, we did rotablation. So after rotablation, we used cutting balloons. Following cutting balloons, we used a non-compliant balloons. So we used a 3 cutting balloon followed by 3.5 NC, again at 16 to 18 atmospheres, both into LED and the LCX. So that's the LED cutting balloon, I mean a non-compliant balloon. This is the, if you can notice the result looks very nice with the post cutting balloons and the NC balloons. So we did a HDIOS run initially, then followed by the HDIOS run now. So we have done HDIOS run, which clearly showed us that there was a dissection in the proximal part of the LCX. The LED again was having a very critical block. Our strategy was to stent the proximal part of the LCX. Normally, generally the strategy would be to stent from the LCX ostium. But once we have done an HDIOS, we noticed that the LCX ostium was not having any stenosis. The result with cutting balloon was very good. So we were happy with it. So this is the first drug-eluting stent deployed in the proximal part of the LCX. This is a 3 into 12 drug-eluting stent deployed at 12 atmospheres with a fairly good result. Once that is done, then we have taken one more drug-eluting stent, 3.5 into 15, again deployed at the left main to LED. So the first stenting was done at the proximal LCX. The next stent was left main to LED, which is 3.5 into 15. So this is a 2 stents deployed. One is the proximal LCX, other is left main to LED stent. So this was again post dilated with a 3.58 balloon at 16 atmospheres. So in the proximal LED, again, which next followed by a 4 into 8 NC. So initially we have put a stent in proximal LCX, followed by a stent in left main to LED, then followed by post dilatation with 3.58 and 4 into 8 NCs into left main. So after that we have done a HDIOS run again. If you see the result looks really beautiful. So the bifurcation initially was having very critical block with a calcified nodule at the sarcostium. This is completely opened up with all the modalities, rotablation, cutting balloon, NC balloons, with a very nice and smooth result. So with 2 stents. So the points here to notice are, this patient was a very sick patient, multiple comorbidities with malignancy, recovering with chemotherapy. The end result was very good, satisfactorily achieved with the procedure time of around 1 hour. The patient was discharged after a couple of days. And patient, this is done a few months back. Patient comes for follow-up still for last 3 months. She's on undergoing chemotherapy for CA ovary. She's fairly maintaining well, no anginal episodes at all. She's been doing her household work. So this is a job which we can do pretty well with using all these newer modalities. Rotablation, which has been there for a few years. In addition, we will use different cutting balloons. If required, we could have used an IBL also. So we have got a few more cases of IVL which we have done, where post-rota, if needed, we can do an IVL, and the result will be as good as this result. So the only point to mention here would be that most of these patients would possibly need an imaging. Imaging will give us more confidence to go ahead and do these sort of cases. So all these complex cases we do tackle at our center, where we do all these patients with rotablation followed by imaging with a fairly good result. So the discussion points in this case would be a decision of PCA versus CABG. The same patient probably was a very fit patient for bypass, probably should have still gone for a bypass. But considering a poor life expectancy and high bleeding risk, she underwent a stenting with good result. Again, we have used cutting balloon and a rotablation. The bifurcation strategy, generally we use 2 stents for most of these patients where a very critical block at the bifurcation is there. Here we have used 2 stents, but the only interesting point would be we have not stented the circ ostium, LCX ostium. They say circ ostium is a different animal. So many times we try to get away not stenting circ ostium. Here we could, because of the imaging, we could get away without stenting the circ ostium with a fairly good result. Thank you. So I've got one or 2 other cases of IVL. Anyway, we would be with fairly good results. So since the options for calcified vessels are manifold, I would we will take few questions, discuss with Dr. Aditya. What would be different options? When does he choose which modality? And any other questions which have come up, we'll discuss for the next few minutes.
Looks like a normal pulmonary. Definitely, they are not being able to manage this 5 or 6 years back. So the key to approaching is not only the one strategy, but into this. People planning very good application of concepts, imaging to get an idea about the severity and extent of action. They have discussed it here in the presentation. And then using the variety of modification techniques. That's the important. At the beginning of the procedure, the use of recommendation, use of flexible balloon, again the use of non-coordinated balloon, and finally stenting and ensuring that result is optimal. So in this era of not only PCI, it's also an era of optimal PCI. These strategies help us to get very good results for us. So, Ramesh, just wanted to know, what do you think about the safety of this? Because a lot of people may be worried about these bars and cutting balloons and how safe do you think it is to do this? Of course, we know, but what do you think about from the patient's perspective?
Correct.
What is your experience with the safety?
Yeah, generally because as Aditya mentioned, we are using all these burrs and all, so there might be a doubt about the safety. Generally, these are all pretty safe procedures. There is always a procedural risk which is there, 1 or 2%, but generally, with the, as he has mentioned, if you're using a lot of imaging and if you're pre-planning very well, our goal is not just to do a good job. We need to do a very safe procedure. So that's our prime concern. The safety is the prime concern. So if the planning is done well, most of these procedures can be done with near 100% safety. It is impossible to achieve 100% safety, but the near 100% safety can be achieved with most of these procedures if you are doing a couple of things. One is a good planning and using good imaging modalities. So there are different ways to tackle these. In addition to, generally the complication rates are very less in these patients when we are using high-end stents with all these modalities. So the key point is to achieve a real optimal result, and the optimal result should be sort of reconfirmed with the imaging modality. If you're sure about it, then the procedure is relatively safe. About the rotablation, the only complication would be a little slow flow, but generally if you're taking care to be very careful in doing rotablation, doing it very slowly, and you're using not too much RPM, high RPM. General RPM would be 150 to 160. If you're increasing the RPM, the risk of slow flow is more. So less RPMs, very slow movements, the bar movement should be slow, and with a pecking movement, if you're using it, it's a relatively safe procedure. cutting balloons and all are virtually have zero risk as such. So the safety is very good, particularly considering the amount of complex cases we do. So that is one thing which we can be sure about. My query to Aditya would be, what would be the long-term results in a calcified vessels, Aditya? What would you think the long-term results would be in these patients? So this is a patient, this is where a palliative PCA sort of thing was done, considering patient was having malignancy and all. What would be, you think, the long-term result in these sort of patients with the result which is achieved?
So, earlier, like in one of the slides, I discussed how calcified vessels affect the MACE or the cardiovascular MI risk and all in the long term. But I think those studies were conducted in the Iraq, where such techniques were never effective or were weak as we are used. Similarly, as evolution cardiologists, we realize that the long-term result quite often depends upon the kind of result we obtain. Kind of expansion of the stent, any television trauma, dissections, or any trauma to the healthy vessel. So we realized in this long years of experience that it is not only important to be able to do an angioplasty, we are focused on doing an optimal angioplasty. So that involves adequate stent expansion, good acquisition of the stents, and then preventing any blood trauma or any injury to the healthy vessel, and having good sampling of the vessel by using imaging modalities. So our angioplasty in the last decade has improved vastly from what we were doing many years back. We are ensuring that the results are not only good visually, we are also ensuring that the result translates into good imaging, cross-checking with a good imaging modality, and then we will be achieving good results. So even in the calcified results, I don't expect any deviation in the outcomes, because ultimately with the strategizing and optimizing our angioplasty techniques, I expect to get the usual MACE or the acceptable MACE yields in these patients. One issue people might have concern is the cost. Of course, in terms of cost, the devices, the options that are available to us, and so what do you think, Ramesh? I mean, do you think the procedures are cost effective or costly or worth pursuing? And what is
the I can sort of assure most of them that these are all pretty cost effective, considering the end results we achieve and the long term results which are coming with these. If you try to do a procedure which is half baked without using any of these modalities, the result will not be very good, and long term results will be very poor, and finally it will be cost ineffective. So they're all worth they're not very costly definitely, and they are worth using, considering safe results and a very gratifying long term result. So considering that, it is, I think there is no doubt they're cost effective. They are being used world over. Definitely in some centers, high-end centers in India, where we do very complex cases as such. So they are definitely cost-effective. The pricing has come down dramatically in the last few years. So in that way, I don't think that's never been an issue, because here the patient, as we all know, is our first priority. The long-term results are very good using this modality. So we just have to plan properly in these patients, whether we need to use all these modalities or a few of these modalities and get the same result as such. In that way, we are happy. And the other point which concerns most of them would be, what about the role of bypass in these patients? So this is the role of bypass remains anyway. Having said that, with the real advancement in the technology and with advancement in the modalities which we use, and the advancement in the stent technology also, we are able to achieve gratifying results with less invasive these things. So most of these procedures we do from radial hand, a few procedures from the femoral root. So 90% or 95% of our procedures are from the hand. In that way, patient will be able to walk out in a couple of days in that way. So many times we are able to. Having said that, definitely there is a role of bypass also. So there is no doubt about it. There are certain patients where they need a clear-cut bypass. So the effective summary would be to achieve a good result at the end of the procedure. In case you are very certain about a very good result, very optimal stent deployment and a good result, then no doubt both are equally good. If you are not sure about the end result, or if you are thinking it is a suboptimal result because of whatever reason it is, bypass would be a better option in this patient. So most of them will be able to achieve a good result with a PCI. Your thoughts, Aditya?
Yeah, the cost effectiveness, one should understand that the immediate cost may seem small. But then heart modification, excellent result, goes a long way in preventing the repeated procedures and long-term adverse events, helps to preserve lives, and gives a more symptom-free interval. So the confidence of the patient and the medical system and their own quality of life is dramatically improved. And then I would really say it's cost effective. Other thing is, like Dr. Ramesh pointed out, the cost has come down with propagation and all in recent years. And like most other medical equipment, the other device prices also will come down in the near future.
Thoughts on bypass versus PCI?
Yeah, so of course, bypass remains the default option for difficult to achieve revascularization. But then our experience has shown us in the past 1.5 decades with the advent of magnetic stents, with the advent of optimal PCI, with these progressive devices, our confidence level and our ability to achieve revascularization comparable to bypass has improved dramatically. So actually, though bypass remains like the final option, but then when we look at pulmonary disease as a continuation in the person's life, especially across various decades, we have to mix up various options that are available to us. Favoring the non-invasive or less surgical options in the initial areas, followed by a more surgical option at a later year. So it would still continue to be part of our armamentarium, but then of course it is entirely based upon our own improvement in the confidence levels.
Yeah, probably younger patients with lesser comorbidities, this would be the first choice as such. That way, very diabetic patients, bad triple vessel disease, anyway we'll have to send for bypass. Any other thoughts or queries? Then if no other queries are there, then we will wind up this talk on complex angioplasty, clearing roadblocks and calcified vessels. Thank you one and all for a patient here. Thank you.